afternoon. It's Monday, February 15th. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. As of this morning, former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert is a convicted prisoner. Olmert entered the gates of the Masayahu prison in Ramla at 10 in the morning to begin his 19-month prison term, becoming the nation's first former premier behind bars. IBA's Ari O'Sullivan was outside the jail this morning and filed this report.
At about 10 to 10 this morning, former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert arrived at the Masayahu prison. It's a tragic day for the former Prime Minister, who will begin his 19-month-long prison sentence here in a special ward that was renovated for the Prime Minister. He'll be sharing a room with somebody else, probably someone from the Holy Land case. Olmert's first day is a busy one, being assessed by a social worker and a criminal psychologist as he goes from being a free man to a convicted prisoner. He'll then sign on his prison possessions and shown his cell. The prison service has said that no soft landing awaited Olmert. He'll have to get up and stand beside his bed at 5:30 every morning for roll call. Lights out will be at 10 o'clock. He's allowed to bring in 4 pairs of socks, 1 set of sheets, 1 change of clothes, and 1,500 shekels in cash to be used at the canteen. He'll also be required to perform prison duties. Like others, Olmert is allowed to stay in his own clothes and only be required to put on his orange prison uniform when out of his compound or receiving visitors.
Usually in every hall in the prison, in the Israeli prison service, within the hall, the inmates can wear their own clothes. Only when they come out of the wing or the hall, whatever you want to call it, to public areas, they have to wear their uniform. The specific hall that we are talking about related to our former Prime Minister, it's different in a way because for example, the education center is within the hall. The visitation area is within the hall. So there will be less need to come out from that hall outside to the public areas of the prison. It doesn't mean that it is because of priority. Mm-hmm. It is because of security. Again, we cannot ignore the importance and crucial issue of security for a former Prime Minister and our national security as a result of that. That's why there will be some differences.
The special Wing 10 at Masayahu prison on the outskirts of Ramle was renovated at a cost of some 4 million shekels, and it's slated for VIPs, very special prisoners. He'll have a television, but only a public telephone, and a synagogue should he turn to prayer. It's a tragic day for the former Prime Minister, but in a way for Israel, it's a sign of democracy, a sign that there is equality and justice and punishment for all. From the Masayahu prison, it's Ari O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Prior to entering the prison gates, Olmert released a recorded video, once again proclaiming his innocence. The former Prime Minister said that while he accepted the sentence, he was not guilty of bribery. He insisted the charges attributed to him did not coincide with the time he served as premier. Olmert spoke of the painful and awkward transformation that he was about to go through, from being the person who was entrusted with the country's security to an inmate behind bars. He concluded that despite everything, no one is above the law, and thanked all those who continued to support and stand by him throughout the long and humiliating process. Today's incarceration brings to an end 7 years of legal proceedings, allegations, charges, and court rulings against the country's 12th Prime Minister. IBA's Margot Dudkevich brings us a wrap of the events that led to his imprisonment.
Former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert's legal troubles are not yet over, as he faces an additional 8-month jail sentence on unrelated fraud and corruption charges. In May 2014, the court sentenced Olmert to 6 years in prison for accepting brides in the early 2000s in connection with the Holy Land complex in the capital. The sentence was reduced to 18 months, in addition to a 60,000 shekel fine. Last week, the Jerusalem's Magistrates Court slapped on an additional 1-month jail sentence for obstructing justice, after Olmert admitted wrongdoing for the first time to the crime, as part of a plea bargain agreement in the Shula Zaken affair. Zaken and his former assistants recorded conversations between the two. As he entered the prison gates today, he is still left in the dark on how long he will remain there. The former Prime Minister still faces a possible additional prison sentence on charges of corruption and fraud. The Supreme Court is still debating his appeal against a third sentence of 8 months in what is known as the Talansky affair, where Olmert is accused of illegally receiving, using and concealing the sum of $153,950 in cash in envelopes from New York businessman Morris Talansky between the years 1993 and 2002. The state is also appealing other cases in which Olmert was acquitted, including the Rishon Tours affair, where the former Prime Minister was accused of double billing organizations for reimbursements for international flights. The Investment Center affair, in which Olmert was given 6 months community service after he was convicted of conflict of interest and granting favors in his capacity as a minister, is also being appealed by the state. Despite a long career serving the public, Olmert will always go down in history as the country's first prime minister to sit behind bars. Moga Dudkevich, IBA News.
Police are investigating what caused the fatal accident in which 6 Israelis were killed and over 15 injured on Highway 1 last night. Egged Bus 402 smashed into a parked semi-trailer on the Jerusalem-Tel Aviv highway near the Anava interchange. We get more in this report from IBA's Efrat Batat.
6 people were killed in last night's fatal accident, 5 of them residents of the capital. They were identified as 27-year-old Meir Cheshin, 26-year-old Israel Weinberg, 23-year-old Chana Frankel, 61-year-old Leah Malmud, 17-year-old Mordechai Cohen, and 17-year-old Levi Yitzchak Amdedi from Yavniel. 18 others were injured, 2 of whom are in critical condition. All the wounded were transferred to a number of hospitals in the center area. Magen David Adom declared the accident a mass casualty event, dispatching ambulances to the scene. Some passengers were thrown from the bus onto the roadside. Others were jammed in their seats. The right side of the bus hit a crane that stuck out from the truck. It ripped away the entire side of the bus, and all the passengers sitting on that side were injured or killed. The truck driver, a 40-year-old man from East Jerusalem, was detained for questioning and told police that he had stopped the truck on the side after hearing engine noises. The bus driver, Chaim Biton, who sustained light injuries, was arrested by police and appeared before the transport court this morning. He is suspected of causing death by negligence. The court extended his remand by 3 days. Police officials said that Biton's reenactment of events did not match facts on the ground. They're trying to determine if he was distracted at the time of the collision, and said that Biton was involved in a similar accident some years ago at the same site of last night's fatal crash.
Moving to the ongoing wave of terror, 2 armed Palestinian terrorists were shot and killed by border policemen outside the Old City's Nablus gate last night after one of them, carrying a suspicious-looking bag, advanced towards a group of border policemen undergoing a briefing. He ignored their calls to halt, pulled an automatic weapon out of the bag, and aimed it at the policemen. They opened fire, killing him on the spot. The second armed terrorist opened fire at the group and was also shot. No Israelis were injured in the attack. A bag thrown to the side by one of the terrorists was checked by sappers who feared it contained a bomb. Police Chief Roni El-Sheikh, who arrived at the scene, commended the forces for their rapid response, saying their actions prevented a large-scale attack. Last night's incident was the 6th thwarted attack during one day. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is off to Berlin for an official work visit, along with 5 of his ministers. Tomorrow he will meet with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and the 2 will hold a joint session with members of their cabinets. The Prime Minister's office said the main purpose of the visit is to tighten security cooperation between Israel and Germany, particularly in the fields of cyber and technology. Netanyahu and his delegation are due back tomorrow night. 1,800 new housing units were built in Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria during 2015. This according to a newly released report by Peace Now. The document published yesterday said nearly 80% of construction occurred in isolated areas Israel is most likely to evacuate under a permanent status agreement. In addition, infrastructure was laid out in preparation for another 734 housing units. Of the apartments already built, some 1,540 are permanent structures and 250 are mobile units. The report also claims an illegal outpost south of Nachal Prat, consisting of 3 new structures, an agricultural plot, and an access road, were also constructed last year. The organization goes on to say that despite government declarations of a building freeze in settlements, tenders were published for more than 1,100 housing units in Judea and Samaria and East Jerusalem. Still no ruling on the controversial gas deal. This after Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday appeared before the High Court to defend the outline from 5 petitions that were filed against it. In an unprecedented move, as it was the first time that a prime minister personally testified before the 5-justice panel, Netanyahu reiterated his stance that failure to implement the deal would immensely impact Israel's security, economy, and foreign relations. He stressed that Israel has entered the last minute in what he called the potential to materialize the state's natural gas reserves. Any additional delay, he said, could severely jeopardize the nation's security and leave the country with grave results which Israel may not recover from. Last week, Netanyahu was instructed to file a personal affidavit to justify his decision to bypass the antitrust authorities' objections to the deal. A final court ruling on the matter will only come at a later date. Dozens of demonstrators gathered outside the court as the prime minister was testifying. Protesters carried signs in Hebrew demanding transparency and saying no more gas robbery and we will not remain silent in the face of tycoons. Opponents lashed out at the prime minister's intentions to bypass antitrust regulations in order to approve the deal. They also accused Netanyahu of trying to intimidate and manipulate the discussion.
I'm part of the movement and I'm part of the appeal. And instead of letting me in the courthouse, people that are part of the appeals, they took them out by force.
We came here to demonstrate that we don't agree with the robbery of the gas, which basically it's lie after lie after lie after lie, and it doesn't meet any facts.
Kindergarten and school children across the country took part in a nationwide drill simulating missile attacks this morning. Sirens sounded at 10:05, marking the start of the exercise, which was conducted by the Army's Home Front Command, Israel Police, Magen David Adom, the fire department, and local authorities. Security forces conducted actual search and rescue missions at 6 schools and institutions. The Army said today's drill had been planned for some time and was not connected to any imminent threat. Russian officials say the delivery of the Russian S-300 missile defense system to Iran will begin soon. Moscow's special presidential envoy in Afghanistan said Tehran has also expressed interest in purchasing the S-400 missile defense system, but added that there are no negotiations being conducted on the sale at present. Earlier this month, the Iranian defense minister told local media that Iran had sent a training delegation to Moscow to learn how to operate the S-300 missile defense system. Last year, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed grave concerns over Russia's decision to sell the sophisticated air defense system after Russian President Vladimir Putin lifted a 5-year ban on providing the missiles to Tehran. At the time, Netanyahu said selling the system to Iran will only encourage Iranian aggression in the region and further undermine stability in the Middle East. Turning to regional news, and in a rare interview with the BBC earlier this month, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad said negotiations for a ceasefire do not mean he will stop fighting terror. Assad stressed that he doesn't intend to be anyone's puppet.
Well, let's talk about American attitudes. Your departure from office is still official American policy, but there are signs that they are softening. Secretary of State John Kerry recently said that instead of saying, he said that you should change your policies. It's time for President Assad to put the people first, think about the consequences. So is that a lifeline that he's offering? Is he softening in his attitude? Do you believe that you are now being seen as part of the solution?
First of all, we don't breathe through the Americans. We only breathe through our citizens. That's how we breathe. This is first. So it's not a lifeline for us. Second, depends on what he means by changing, what he said was the word, behavior.
Put the people first, think about the consequences of their actions.
Yeah, okay.
This is seen as a softening because in the past they've said, first of all, Assad must go.
Yeah. So second, it depends on what Kerry meant by his statement or any other official. It's not only about him as person. Whatever they say doesn't mean for us to be puppets. Whatever they say about for us
talking
is
about being a
about
partner, maybe.
to be independent, to work for our interest, to work for the common interest of others, but we'll never be puppets who work against their interest for their interest.
In local money matters, shares in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were up, while the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading. Here are the late afternoon numbers. And the forecast is calling for another rise in temperatures. It will be unseasonably warm tomorrow. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that brings us to the end of this broadcast of IBA News. I'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same channel. Until then, have a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.